Hello everybody, what is going on? It's Voodoo 51292 here, and welcome to my 10th episode of my series. I scooped my chair so I'm a little bit more centered. My 10th episode of my running series called Voodoo's Brew here on Voodoo 51292, which is basically a series of videos where I just turn on the camera and basically shoot on a number of issues, any big issue that's controversial, or that I feel very strongly about. A lot of times it is video game related, since my channel is primarily focused on video games. But a lot of times, as you've seen, it's not video game related. It's just an opportunity for me to give you, or it's an opportunity for me to get the chance to kind of just vent and talk about issues that I feel strongly about. Excuse me. And so, in this episode, I will be talking about sports, a recent development in sports, primarily in the National Football League. And basically, it's an issue that was surfaced on Friday, March the 2nd of 2012, and has since spread like wildfire. News was coming out all day. The story continued to take twists and turns as the day continued, and I want to provide my thoughts, my opinions on this, especially since I'm in a unique position to do so. So, the issue that I will be talking about today, or tonight I should say, is, as you can see by the title, the New Orleans Saints bounty program scandal, basically. And first of all, I do want to say that this probably will be a very long video. I have a feeling it's going to be, because I have a lot of things to say. I'm in a unique position to say them and voice my opinion, and I have a lot to say. So if you guys don't want to sit here through a very long video, then you might want to look for somebody else, but I'm going to spill the beans and get everything I have off my chest. And if you haven't noticed by my hat, I don't know if you've been able to see it yet or not, this is why I have a unique perspective on this, because I am a die-hard New Orleans Saints fan. I have been my whole life. I live in the city of New Orleans, born and raised here, lived here my whole life, and I'm a die-hard fan of the New Orleans Saints. So basically what I'm going to do first is kind of set up for you guys the day, how it unfolded, basically what happened, what allegations were surfaced, and where we stand as of right now. I'm filming this in the early morning hours of Saturday, March 3rd. So, basically, first thing to say is that this whole thing came as a giant shock to all of us, everybody here in the city, and especially for me. I'm a guy who follows this program, this franchise, in and out every day, off season, regular season, doesn't matter. I've been following it with a lot more interest recently, of course, because of the contract situation going on with Drew Brees right now, some of the other players that we have contract problems with. So I've been following it very closely. I know a lot of people in the city have, and we have never heard of this investigation the NFL did or anything like this until it was just randomly broke on Friday. So basically what the NFL said is, they said that after an extensive investigation they had conducted over a couple of years, or 1 year, or something like that, that they had enough evidence to come out and allege that 22 to 27 defensive players from the New Orleans Saints took part in what they called an illegal bounty program, or a pay-for-performance program, in the years 2009, 2010, and 2011, the 3 seasons that Greg Williams was the defensive coordinator of the New Orleans Saints. And at first, let me explain basically what they accused them of. Alright, basically what this bounty program is, or this pay-for-performance program is, or what they allege it was that these players from the New Orleans Saints, with the knowledge and sometimes the direction of their defensive coordinator Greg Williams, would contribute money from their own pocket into a community pot, and basically they would award under the table cash rewards to defensive players who would basically deliver big hits in the game. And what the NFL again asserts is that they found 2 specific rewards that were given out. One being a $1,000 reward for what they call a knockout shot. So I guess that means if a guy goes and hits the other player and knocks him out of the game, he'll make $1,000. And the other one, which obviously is a little bit more disturbing, is a $1,500 reward for what they call a card-off shot, which can only mean if the guy hits the other player so hard that he has to be carted off the field, he gets $1,500. And of course this is all under the table money, and it's basically a big gambling ring. And when the story first broke, it seemed the way they were presenting it as if this was more of a player thing, and maybe a Greg Williams thing, to where he had knowledge of this situation, to the point where he would actually hand out the payments, that kind of thing. Well, as the story continued to develop, then it was basically made known that not only did Greg Williams know about this, but the head coach Sean Payton, the general manager Mickey Loomis, and even the owner Tom Benson knew that this kind of activity was going on. Now, according to reports and a statement issued by Tom Benson, the owner of the Saints, he came out and said, well, I told Loomis, the general manager, to put an end to it. I didn't want this continuing, and apparently Mickey Loomis ignored him and didn't shut it down, and it ran all the way through the end of the 2011 season when Greg Williams left or was fired or whatever the hell he was. He left. Isn't our defensive coordinator anymore. He's now the Rams coordinator, so he's their problem now. But so that happened, all right? Then there are reports that Jonathan Vilma, who is the starting middle linebacker of the Saints, basically the leader of the defense, personally put a $10,000 bounty on Brett Favre before the NFC Championship game of 2009. And the NFL further came out and said, well, we believe 2 specific players that were targeted by this bounty program for the Saints were, of course, Kurt Warner in the 2009 NFC wildcard game with the Arizona Cardinals at the Saints, a game that I was actually in attendance at. I actually sat in the seats of the Superdome and watched that game and watched firsthand the hit that Bobby McRae put on Kurt Warner after he threw that interception. That's, of course, the hit that they point at and say, oh, we targeted Kurt Warner. And then, of course, the other player, like I said, was Brett Favre in the NFC Championship game. And, of course, anybody who's a fan of the NFL will remember that game and remember the beating that Brett Favre took at the Saints' hands in that game. And then, of course, like I said, reports surfaced that Jonathan Vilma himself put a $10,000 bounty. He said, I'll put $10,000 of my own money up for anybody who can knock Brett Favre completely out of this game. So then, obviously, the whole franchise was under the bus at that point, because you had all the way up to the ownership, management, head coach, everybody knowing about this situation and no one doing anything to stop it. So that's a major problem. Then, right after that, the newspaper in Washington, D.C. posts a story saying that, oh, well, our players with the Washington Redskins were paid, were under the same kind of, payment for performance system when Greg Williams was the defensive coordinator of the Redskins before he was the coordinator of the Saints, that they ran the same kind of operation. And throughout the whole day, alright, at some point during the day, Greg Williams actually came out and made a statement through the St. Louis Rams, basically apologizing, saying, I was a part of it, it was wrong, I knew it was going on, I knew it was wrong while we were doing it, I should have stopped it, but I got caught up in it, so I didn't stop it, it's a hard lesson, I'll never do it again. But of course he made this apology before the Washington newspaper posted their story, so it basically made his apology completely irrelevant, because obviously he knew it was wrong when he was doing it with the Redskins. Then he came and tainted our franchise with this pay-for-performance nonsense, and so his apology means nothing. The fact that he knew it was wrong, he'll never do it again. He knew that before. But basically from him doing that, he basically also helps throw the Saints under the bus, because from this point, it was just allegations. Now the fact that he's apologized, he's basically admitted to this, saying that yes, in fact, it was happening, it was going on. So obviously, the news has been all over sports. If you've watched any ESPN, any NFL network, been on the internet today, not even on a sports site, just a general news site, you've seen this story probably. And it's just a big mess right now. And it comes at horrible timing when we're trying to get Drew Brees signed to a contract as well. But now that I've kind of set it up for you and set up what the allegations are, how they kind of played itself out today, I'm going to give you two unique perspectives. The first thing I'm going to do is tell you why it's ridiculous bullshit that the Saints were 100% wrong in doing this, that they deserve to be punished for it, and that it was wrong on every level. But then I'm going to come back and tell you why this situation isn't nearly as bad as people want to paint it to be, or the media wants to paint it to be. And I'm going to try to lobby you to not look at the New Orleans Saints going forward as a tainted franchise, as a dirty franchise, or anything like that, which I know maybe you're thinking, well, there's no way that you can convince me of that. And maybe I can't, but I'm going to do my best to try. So, first of all, start it off, okay? Absolutely horribly wrong, should never have happened. And basically, it's wrong on a bunch of different levels, alright? But first and foremost, it's illegal, okay? It's obviously illegal. Because gambling, in any sense, in the NFL, is illegal. Meaning you cannot play poker with your teammates, you can't shoot dice in the locker room, and you can't do this pay-for-performance type of system, where obviously it's the same thing. All the players donate money into a big community pot, and they're basically betting, taking a chance on, you know, what player is gonna knock this guy out of the game or whatever. And obviously that's illegal. There's a salary cap that every team has, a certain amount of money that they're allowed to spend to pay players. And obviously, with this going on, that skirts the salary cap, and players are getting paid money that they're not authorized to be paid, and of course it's under the table, so none of this is taxed, and it's all very hush-hush under the table, and it's just wrong. It's sneaky, it's dirty, and it's wrong for this money to be changing hands like this in this format. So it's wrong at that standpoint. It's also wrong, again, for a moral standpoint. Now, we're going to talk about this, but obviously, I mean, first of all, it speaks to the character of a guy like Greg Williams, okay, who obviously doesn't have a lot of it. If he's been doing this since before the Saints, and I have a feeling he was doing this long before Washington. I have a feeling that Greg Williams was doing this as soon as he got into the league in '99 with the Tennessee Titans. Obviously, there's no way of knowing that, but that's just what I predict. You cannot use money to incentivize going out and knocking players out of the game. And certainly, from the media standpoint, they've tried to paint this picture that the Saints basically went out with the intention to seriously injure players on the other team. And we're going to talk about this and why I don't agree with this coming up. But basically that's how the NFL is coming out and painting this, and the media. And first of all, if you have to use extra money to motivate your team to play well, that means you're not a very good coach. If you can't stand there and motivate your players based on the fact that they're getting paid already millions and millions of dollars to play hard every game, if you can't get them motivated by looking and saying, guys, this is about winning games, this is about winning a championship. If the only way that you can get your players to play hard for you is to basically set up an illegal gambling ring then you're a bad coach. And that's probably explains why since '99 he's bounced all over the freaking map, considering that he was the defensive coordinator of the Titans, then the head coach of the Buffalo Bills, then the defensive coordinator of the Washington Redskins, then the defensive coordinator of the New Orleans Saints, now he's defensive coordinator of the St. Louis Rams. Apparently nobody wants this guy, alright? And now we understand why. He's not a nice person, and he's obviously not a very good coach. Because, like I said, that's very sad if that's the only way that you can motivate your guys to play for you, alright? And obviously you can't use terminology like knockout and cart off shots. That's just horrible connotations, especially the cart off shots. It's just bad. It makes you look ugly. It makes your team look ugly. And I'm not saying this is all Greg Williams' fault. Obviously the players had a big stake in this too. But if you want my opinion, this never would have happened if Greg Williams hadn't come and introduced this to the organization. And of course I'm not excusing the players' involvement, but what I'm saying is if we had an upstanding defensive coordinator from the beginning who never even brought this up and would never tolerate anything like this, then it wouldn't have happened, okay? So squarely, the blame falls on Greg Williams, in my opinion. And of course there's evidence to support this, saying that, you know, he's run programs like this in the past at other organizations, meaning that pretty much he brought this with him. So obviously from that standpoint, it's wrong. It's legally wrong and morally wrong. So I don't need to go into a lot of detail about why it's wrong. Everybody knows it's wrong. And yes, the Saints do deserve to be penalized for this, obviously. And they're going to be. But, you know, it's unacceptable. And I'm ashamed of it. As a Saints fan, I'm ashamed and embarrassed by it. Because I was under the impression, like a lot of people were, that the Saints were a very upstanding, classy organization. I thought that once the new era began, basically the era of Mickey Loomis, of Sean Payton, you know, the Drew Brees era, the Drew Brees and Sean Payton era, so to speak, since 2006, since that started, the New Orleans Saints kind of were the darling team of the NFL, to where they were the team that everybody was rooting for, especially after what happened with the Hurricane, and then in '09 when we win the Super Bowl. And I'm under the impression, living in the city, that we are a very classy organization, and obviously then this news broke and kind of just destroyed all of that, destroyed my image of my team, and really let me down, because I thought that the organization was something that they're not. They're not squeaky clean. They're obviously not your model upstanding organization when it comes to the NFL, which I thought that they really were. So it's disappointing. It's disheartening. I'm very sad about it. I'm depressed about it. I really didn't think that the Saints would ever do that kind of thing, and I didn't think that, you know, I didn't like Greg Williams because I thought his defense sucked. I have no idea. I couldn't even fathom that, you know, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that you sit on your couch, and when the other team, you know, you think is taking cheap shots at your quarterback, you say it kind of in jest, like, oh, what are they doing? Paying them to, you know, to injure the guy? I mean, that sounds like something you would joke about on the couch, but unfortunately, it was real, and it happened. Not necessarily to injure, and I'll go into this, but they were being paid to lay out big hits. Illegally, by the way. So now that I've stated the obvious, that it was wrong, now I'm going to talk about how the media has been portraying this, and talk about why this really isn't this horrible, cataclysmic event that everyone's making it out to be, alright? Because obviously, first of all, I've been listening to these reports all day. I've been listening to the radio all day. I've been reading articles all day. And you gotta weigh everything with a grain of salt, because the media is always going to be slanted. Obviously, if you're listening to stuff here in the city, it's going to be slanted and more favorable to the team. Obviously, if you read national media, they're going to sensationalize everything, and it's going to be very harsh and unfavorable to the team, and they're going to report a lot of things that aren't true, or they're going to cleverly use language to insinuate something that's not true. So I take everything with a grain of salt, but I try to weigh out the facts, and I formulated my own opinion about what I think happened based on facts. Okay. First of all, it is a fact that this kind of pay-for-performance system is not only commonplace in the National Football League, but that it has been for years and years and years. And I know this because I was listening to WWL, and they had Bobby Hebert, who's a very famous local sportscaster, on there, and if you are a fan of college football, you potentially know who Bobby Hebert is. He kind of was thrust into the national spotlight when, after the debacle, when LSU got shut out by Alabama in the national championship, he basically came out in the press conference and openly grilled Les Miles and was calling Les Miles out in the press conference, and he got all kinds of bad, albeit, but a whole bunch of national attention put on him. So you may have heard of Bobby Hebert from that game. But anyway, he was on the show, and he was a quarterback for the New Orleans Saints, and many years ago. And he came out and said, listen, when I was a player, this kind of stuff went on in the NFL all the time. 25, 30 years ago, there were pay-for-performance systems being run in the National Football League, and it's been around since before that. And I absolutely believe that. I mean, to think that this kind of thing isn't happening right now and hasn't happened in the past is silly. Of course it has. That's the bottom line, all right? And the Saints, unfortunately, for us and for the organization, were the unlucky ones who got caught. And now, again, I'm not trying to justify this and saying that it's right in any means just because it happens a lot. It is wrong. Of course it's wrong. But I'm saying that it's not something that the Saints... That's one thing that the media is trying to do, is basically say how bad the Saints organization are. They can't believe anything like this is going on. That's a load of baloney, because everybody knows that this has been going on and continues to go on and probably will continue to go on, even though there's been this investigation. So the Saints are not the first, nor are they the only, or nor will they be the last organization to participate in such a system. Okay, like I said, they were the ones that got caught, which obviously means that somebody, either a former coach or a pissed off teammate that we cut or something, came out to the NFL and basically ratted the organization out and tipped off the NFL. I don't know who it was, and that person probably really wishes that nobody would figure out who it is. Okay, so that's a fact. But what I really do believe about this whole situation is that the intent of this was not, I repeat, not to purposefully... How can I put... I gotta be careful with my wording here, because wording is important. The intent was not to purposefully take the field and debilitate or critically injure any of the Saints' opponents. I really believe that that is the truth of it. I think that illegal and cheap shots were never condoned by the organization, and that was not the purpose. And the reason I believe that is because all you have to do is look at the numbers. If in fact the deal was that they were supposed to go out and injure, specifically injure the other team, or specific players for the other team, you would have had the Saints having a ridiculous amount of unnecessary roughness penalties. You would have seen the defenders going for the opponent's knees. You would have seen them going at their head. You would have seen just a ridiculous backlash. If that was really the case here. And the bottom line is, if you look in the year 2009, when this started, and the reports say that this was the height of the pay-for-performance program, when the pot that the players gathered was actually up to $50,000. If you look at 2009, which was the height of this, the New Orleans Saints were 8th in the league with they were the 8th fewest penalized team for unnecessary roughness. Okay? meaning that they were in the bottom fourth of the NFL in unnecessary roughness, meaning that they really didn't get called for it very much at all. And if they did, it was obviously usually accidental. It was nothing like players getting up after the play and taking a cheap shot on a guy. It was either knocking a guy out of bounds, face mask, whatever the case may be. So, again, those are facts. That's not subjective information. Those are facts. The 8th fewest unnecessary roughness penalties in 2009 when this bounty program was at its peak. So here's what I honestly believe that the program was about. I think it was a way for Greg Williams and the other teammates to put pressure on each other to go out and perform and play with intensity, to lay big hits on players, to make them feel it, okay? And it was sort of a game within the game. It was a game that the players played in the locker room, something that they could get excited about and would watch on SportsCenter the next day, one of their teammates laying out a big hit on a guy, and they would all go nuts. And because let's be honest, $1,000, $1,500 as a payout, that is nothing to an NFL player. I mean, $1,000 to them is like $10, okay, or less, $5 maybe. It's nothing considering how much they get paid in their contracts. So it really wasn't about the money. It wasn't about, well, I'm serious about I have to go knock this guy out of the game because I'm going to make $1,000 extra bucks. No. It was just money. It was just an incentive. It was bragging rights more than anything else. Now, I was talking to my dad about this earlier and I said, well, if that was the case, then they should have handed out candies. They should have handed out Mr. Good bars to the players that laid big hits. They should have given them a pony ride or something at the park. Something other than money, which clearly they don't need more money, and clearly is illegal and is stipulated as such by the NFL rules. They should have handed out Starburst or blue ribbons or whatever, not money, okay? But the bottom line is that the hits that the Saints gave, and I'm talking about the hit on Kurt Warner, the hits on Brett Favre, and yes, Vikings fans need to get over it, were legal hits. The hit on Kurt Warner was completely legal. Was it a little violent, maybe a little excessive to target the quarterback like that? Probably. Was it legal? Absolutely. Okay. Now, maybe it's kind of an unspoken rule in the NFL that on an interception, when there's a defenseless quarterback in the play, obviously when he's as old as Kurt Warner was, you don't go light him up and knock him 10 yards off his feet, okay? Maybe that's an unspoken rule. Bottom line is it's not an official rule that you can't do it. I mean, I guess you could make the argument, okay, there's not an official rule to go after a guy's knees. That's not illegal by the books, but you don't do it, okay? But bottom line is that even Kurt Warner has come out and said, listen, that hit on me was perfectly legal. And you're probably going to see a split in the video very soon because my camera only does half-an-hour videos and then it'll cut off and I'll have to edit it together. So if you see a split, a little jump in the video, that's what happened. But the hits were legal, all right? They were not sent out there to maliciously hurt and cripple the other team's players. That's not what happened here. Basically what it is, it'd be no different because, think about it, every defensive coordinator in the National Football League tells his players that they need to go lay out big hits. It's a vital part of the game, especially if you're hitting quarterbacks. All the fans love it. That's why fans love the NFLs, for the big hits and all that kinds of stuff. All the defensive coordinators around the NFL are telling their players to go out, lay big hits, obviously within the confines of the rules. But if you can get a good shot on a quarterback, you take it. You hit him in the chest, you hit him in the side. Obviously, you don't hit him in the head, you don't hit him in the knees. But if you can get a good shot on a quarterback or any other big player, you do it. You set a tone by doing that. I mean, look at what the safety for the 49ers, Dante Whitner, did to Pierre Thomas in the playoff game. I mean, he knocked him out. He hit him so hard, he knocked him clean out. That set the tone for the entire game for the 49ers. They played a hard physical game the whole time, and they won the game. Now, the only reason that people aren't going nuts on the 49ers is because they weren't making money. They weren't making $1,000, $1,500 extra dollars. But I guarantee you that the defensive coordinator of the San Francisco 49ers before that game said, listen, we got to hit these guys in the mouth. We're going to hit them hard. Every time they touch the ball, we're going to have 3 guys there popping them, knocking them all over the place, and they're going to feel it, okay? There's no difference between that and what the Saints did except for the exchanging of money, which was illegal. Other than that, though, it's the same thing, and there's no malicious intent outside of that, okay? That's what I really want people to understand and take away from this video, if anything, is that the money basically was an added pep talk that Greg Williams, because he's not a good coach and he's obviously he can't get players to play for him, he had to implicate this kind of system to provide the players with some kind of incentive to go out there and play harder. Is it sad? Absolutely. Is it illegal? Absolutely. But it was not done to cripple people, to end their careers, to do anything like that. It was what any defensive coordinator tells their defenders to do, except that some other defensive coordinators don't use money. I know that there's other ones who do, but that's the bottom line of it, okay? And the media is trying to take this, and here's the whole situation. Here's what's going to happen between the commissioner and the NFL and the national media. We're the example now, okay? The Saints are going to be the team that they make an example out of. Now, why does it happen in 2012 when this thing's been going on since probably the 1950s or 60s? Why does it only happen to one team? It's one of those things, okay? Somebody ratted us out. Somebody provided a hot tip to the NFL. They had to launch an investigation, and they found out, okay? But we're the example now. And so the NFL, I fully believe, is going to come down as hard as they possibly can on us, on our organization. They're probably going to fine us, possibly suspend players, possibly take draft picks from us. It's going to be bad, and we're going to feel the effects from it. And I can't argue with the sanctions, the penalties. We broke the rules. What we did was illegal. And if you want my opinion, I think Greg Williams should be personally penalized. I think he should be banned from coaching for a year or two because of not only his direct involvement with the Saints, but with his prior involvement with other franchises. This is obviously a problem that follows this guy around. So he shouldn't be able to just leave the Saints, sign with the Rams, and say, oh, I'm sorry, I wash my hands clean, I'm not part of that organization anymore, so I don't have to take any penalty. That's bullshit, and he should be penalized just like the Saints are going to be penalized. He should, like I said, be banned from coaching for a year or two as a result. Now, will that happen? I have no idea. But we're going to be made the example. Everybody's going to come down hard on us. And yeah, our image is going to be tainted, and people are not going to look at us the same way. Going into next year, we're probably going to be one of the most hated franchises, going from one of the best franchise, like one of the most loved franchises by fans because of our story, to now one of the most hated franchises. And every time we win a game next year, or any time we do anything, people are going to come out and say, oh, they're playing dirty, they're taking cheap shots again, they're a dirty team. And we're just going to have to deal with that and live with the negative press. That's the consequences of breaking the rules and being an idiot. And there was a lot of people who were being an idiot on the Saints team, including the entire coaching staff, the general manager, and the players. We're all being idiots. And this is the price that they have to pay now for being an idiot. And obviously whatever penalties that the NFL winds up laying down, we have to suffer for it. But I don't want people to think of us as a dirty organization, as a dirty franchise. like I said before, if we were a dirty franchise, we would have so many unnecessary roughness penalties. Our guys would be getting fined up the ass. Players would be getting suspended all over the place. Now, I don't want to specifically piss off any fan bases or anything, but I am going to use some teams as an example of teams that are way dirtier, in my opinion, than the New Orleans Saints by facts, and may or may not be having it paid for performance plan. Like I said, I'm sure there's other teams who are doing it, who did it last year, but we won't know that. You've got individual players for one thing. You look at somebody like James Harrison, alright? I'm sorry. James Harrison is a dirty football player. He is. He's a dirty player. He intentionally goes out there trying to hurt people. He goes for the head. He goes for the knees. He's dirty. He's a horrible, dirty player. But he has been put in the spotlight for being a dirty player. He's had multiple fines. He's been suspended. He's kind of the stigma of the NFL when it comes to dirty players. Ndamukong Suh for the Lions. He's a dirty player. He stomps on people after the play. He hits them late. He hits them in the head. He hits them in the knees. He's a dirty player. He has been brought to the forefront of the NFL as a dirty player, and he has been targeted as such. In my opinion, the whole Lions defense, look at the game that they played against the New Orleans Saints last year in 2011. They must have had 5 or 6 unnecessary roughness penalties for hitting our players late, getting up after the play, and shoving guys, getting in their face. Now, I know some people thought of the Saints as a dirty team, mainly the Vikings fans. Okay, I think that's pretty much it. The Vikings fans, because the Vikings are the team that complain the most and can't get over the fact that they lost that game to us. But for the most part, the New Orleans Saints were never brought out into the open, and people never pointed at the New Orleans Saints and said, that's a dirty team, that's a dirty franchise, a dirty defense. Why? Because we didn't get unnecessary roughness penalties. We didn't have one person on our team running around, hitting people in the head, cutting their knees out. We didn't have players. Now, I know maybe a couple of our guys got fined, but every team in the league has a guy who's fined now with all these new ridiculous rules. But, one of the only things I can think of was Roman Harper's late hit on Steve Smith last year of the Panthers. Other than that, though, the Saints were never looked at as a dirty team, and they never were until this report surfaced. And I guess my point is that the Saints did not play dirty football. They didn't. And the intent of this program was not for the team to go out and play dirty football. It just wasn't. The entire incentive for this was just for players to go out there, have an extra incentive to go out there and play hard, to lay big hits, to make big plays in the confines of the rules. That's all. That's the bottom line. And if you think that it's not happening in other places, you're naive and you're incorrect, because it most certainly is. The Saints, unfortunately, were the ones that got caught. It was wrong. It shouldn't have happened. We're gonna pay the penalty for it, as we should. We're gonna be made the example so that all the other teams who are doing it will cut it out. That's the NFL's hope, because they're gonna see what kind of penalties we get and say, listen, it's not worth it. But I don't want our reputation, the New Orleans Saints reputation, to be completely smeared and tattered because of this finding of something that is really being made out to be a lot more malicious than it really was. And as far as Jonathan Vilma saying, here's $10,000 to knock Brett Favre out of the game, I don't know if that's true or not. I really have no earthly idea. But bottom line is that it wouldn't have mattered if there's money on the table. It doesn't matter who the Vikings were playing. Every team that the Vikings played was trying to knock Brett Favre out of the game. He was old as dirt. He was 41 years old. He was a good player, though. Okay? Or he was 40. I don't even know. He was old as dirt. Every single team that the Vikings played was trying to knock Brett Favre out of the game by hitting him and knocking him right on his ass, because he was old and he was their quarterback. Every team that we played was trying to knock Drew Brees out of the game for the same reason, okay? The difference, as I said, was was the fact that, the other players may or may not have been receiving money, but I know a lot of the players were not receiving extra incentives to do this kind of stuff. The only difference. And the Saints were a bunch of idiots for doing it. It never should have been done. There's 100 other ways that they should have been able to motivate their players to play. And if Greg Williams couldn't motivate his guys to play hard any other way than this, then he should have been fired years ago. Or maybe he should have never been hired. That's the bottom line. But those hits on Brett Favre that we had, you can believe what you want, were legal hits. And that over-under play when we messed up his ankle was not planned. If you watch the play, it was an accident. These things happen. One guy came around from the side and tried to wrap up his feet and tackle him. The other guy got to him from the front. They came at the same time, and one decided that he was going to try to get his feet, unbeknown of the other guy who tried to get him up high. It was one of those football things. He got bent in a wrong way. It was a legal hit. There were no flags thrown. I think we may have only got one penalty for unnecessary roughness on the quarterback that game. They were legal hits, alright? So in conclusion, before I ramble on and repeat myself 100 times, I'm glad that Greg Williams is gone. I'm glad that he's out. He was obviously poisonous to the organization. He was not a very good defensive coordinator. I think this whole thing understands now, or makes light of, why the Saints could never freaking tackle anybody, because Greg Williams, instead of teaching our guys how to play good fundamental football and how to wrap up, he was teaching them how to knock the snot out of every single person. And obviously, he was bad. He was bad for this organization. He was poisonous for this organization. He brought that system with him when he came in. I'm glad he's gone. Okay, and I think he should be punished. I'm glad that we have Steve Spagnuolo in. I don't know if he's ever done a pay-for-play program. Bottom line is, I know for damn sure he's not now, especially with the New Orleans Saints, after all of this. And he seems like a very fine, upstanding coach, and I just want to move on from it. Obviously, we're going to have to deal with the media shitstorm for the next couple of weeks until we get a decision on Peyton Manning and the draft, and they find other things to talk about. Probably heading into next season, we'll have to deal with it too. They'll talk about it during next season, and we'll have to deal with the consequences that the NFL lays on us. But eventually, we'll move on, okay? We'll move past it. People will move past it. They won't talk about it anymore. And I want to start over. I'm glad that we have a new defensive coordinator. I'm excited about him. I like Spagnuolo a lot. I think he's very good, and hopefully he will bring a culture of real football to our defense and to our team. And he'll teach our players how to play defense. He'll get those guys motivated and wanting to play for him without setting up an illegal cash fund. He'll teach them how to tackle. He'll teach them how to get pressure on the quarterback with the front four, not have to blitz every single play. And he'll bring a new culture and a defensive revitalization to this team. And I hope that everybody can look past this, can see through the media, understand that the media is sensationalizing this, and just understand from the facts I've laid out on the table that yes, it was wrong, it never should have happened, but that the situation is not as bad as the media wants you to think, okay? And it was not some malicious operation. Our guys are not a bunch of mercenaries that go out there and just try to maim and cripple the other team. It was simply an incentive for those guys to go out there and lay some big hits on guys and try to rattle the quarterbacks and, yeah, maybe try to knock them out of the game. That's what every defense does in the National Football League. They try to knock out the quarterbacks. They try to knock out the big receivers, lay big hits. Again, just like the 49ers did against the New Orleans Saints, what Dante Whitner did to Pierre Thomas. That's football. It's violent. People get hit. The other team wants to knock out or at least get in the head of the other players, hit them hard. And if you don't like that, don't suit up in pads and go on the field. But obviously, you can't offer cash incentives for this kind of thing. You can't run an illegal gambling ring out of your locker room. That's stupid, it's moronic, it's idiotic, and now you've cost the team and the franchise a lot of just unnecessary pressures when we're trying to get contracts signed. You've really tarnished the reputation of the franchise. and now you put us in a bad position with penalties from the NFL. It's stupid and it's idiotic, and that's all I can really say about it. So, I'm Voodoo51292. Thank you guys for watching. I really hope that you guys can understand where I'm coming from here with all of this. And I'm sure I'm going to get comments on this video from people who just don't understand and just want to blow this out of proportion. They're going to comment on this video and say that I don't know what I'm talking about, that the Saints are a bunch of thugs and all that stuff. But bottom line is that's not the case, and people need to look past it and understand that it was wrong, shouldn't have happened, and we'll move on from it, and everything will be okay. Brett Favre has come out and said that he's not pissed off at us. Kurt Warner has come out and said that, you know, the shot on him in that game was legal. But it's funny that this illegal program was being run for 3 years, yet they only seem to talk about 2 people in 2 specific games, which was Warner and Brett Favre. You want to know why? Because those guys got messed up and got memorable shots put on them. But if you look at the other 3 years, or all the other games we played in those 3 years, nobody can point to a specific example really, except maybe the Steve Smith hit last year, which that stuff happens. I mean, look at the fight that Andre Johnson and Cortland Finnegan got in a couple of years back. But other than that, it's funny how nobody can point to another game in that 3-year span and say, oh, well, that's more evidence that they were getting paid, and look, there's more dirty play, and look, it's just funny to me that they can only point to those 2 specific games and say, and that's what they want to harp on us for. But, oh well, there's nothing I can do about that. I still am a fan of the New Orleans Saints. Die hard. Hopefully we can move past this. Hopefully our reputation is not completely in the shitter, and hopefully we can come back and be a classy organization and regain the respect of the league and be a model franchise in the future and eliminate all this bullshit about paying people to play. Just go out and do your freaking job and just be smart and don't be stupid. That's the best advice I can offer. So, thank you guys for watching. I'm Voodoo51292. I appreciate it, and I hope to see you guys again on another episode of Voodoo's Thoughts or anywhere on my channel. So thank you very much. I will see you next time.